r/AskReddit by Redmond Dts. People who have survived attempted murder. How did it happen? How did you survive? Someone tried to rob my store during a psychotic episode. He trashed the place, tried to crack open my head with a 16-inch bong and stripped naked as I was ejecting him. Then he drove a jeep through the wall and tried to run me over. The counter I stood behind all day stopped the jeep. I left through the massive hole he left in the wall. I was attacked by my neighbor's teenage son during a drug-induced psychosis. He came to the door asking for help. I stepped outside as he was pointing back to his place saying someone was trying to get him. I quickly realized he wasn't making sense, and as I started moving back towards the door he started screaming about why no one was helping him. He got really angry and started screaming he was going to kill us all. I ran back in the door and felt him hit me twice. I locked the door and grabbed my phone to call police. He was still yelling and moving back and forth between my place and his. It wasn't until police arrived and detained him that I went back outside. That was when I realized I wasn't just sweating from fear, but my entire back was soaked in blood. What I'd thought were punches was actually him stabbing me twice. Very ugly scars, but fortunately no long-term damage. I ran over my would-be carjacker who had a shotgun in hand. Did you back up on him to check that he wasn't okay? As much as anyone would probably love to do that. Unfortunately, I'm sure only the first hit is considered self-defense. I was shot at during an attempted carjacking. Car chase ensued. Police caught up to them. They skipped bail. FBI found them 4 states away 2 years later. 21-year sentence for both. To answer the bail question, I have no idea how they got bail. They were on a crime spree, robbed several people at gunpoint that same evening. When we showed up for the trial as witnesses for the prosecution, we were told they skipped bail. By the time they caught up to them, our testimony was no longer required. Edit to answer bail questions. Had a crazy violent ex-boyfriend who kidnapped me at knife point. He would shoot meth and lose his grip on reality. Literally, beat me because he was convinced I was cheating on him with ghosts and shadow people. I finally was able to break up with him, but he found me, forced me into his car at knife point, drove me out a back road and beat me from sun up to sundown. Then he drove me back to his house where the violence continued until he choked me out until I pissed myself and woke up the next day. Freaking creep actually cuddled up to me after he put me out. At one point he put a loaded gun to my temple. Told me to close my eyes and think about all of the bad things I've done in my life and why I deserve to die. But I didn't. All I thought about was my daughter, people I loved, people I hadn't seen in years, and just happy thoughts. I couldn't tell you if 30 seconds went by or 5 minutes. And then he pulled the trigger. Mother sucker shot it right past my face, blew a hole through his wall. I thought my eardrums were busted. Fast forward a lot of trauma to how I escaped. He ran out of meth, and I talked him into driving me to town. He lived an hour in the country, and taking me to my doctor appointment. I was on Suboxone at the time doing outpatient, but they also had an inpatient program, and convinced him that I would go and get my script, sell them and buy him more heroin. I told him I would forget everything that happened and we'd just have fun. He stopped on the way and bought me some concealer and actually took me. I get there, run inside and explain what happened as fast as I could, and they locked the doors, called the cops and admitted for inpatient to save my life. I fell asleep once they got me in a room and slept for 3 days straight due to the concussions. But screw him. I lived, and he's facing felonious assault, kidnapping and rape with a deadly weapon. When I was 9, an older kid held me underwater at a public pool trying to drown me. I fought back best I could for what felt like forever. Ran out of air and started to black out. Had a time to think, yet this is it. My lungs at that point felt like they were on fire, and as I went unconscious the last thing I remember is inhaling water. My older brother saw what was happening and got the guy off me and dragged me out of the pool. I came to coughing up water. All the adults and lifeguards chalked it up to kids playing. But the kid had told me days prior, in an incredibly matter-of-fact, bone-chilling way, that someday he was going to kill me. He was trying to make good on that. My ex, recently at the time, always was getting on me about teaching her to shoot. I never did. She grabbed my own gun out of storage while she was attacking me while she was blacked out drunk. She loaded it and pulled the slide back far enough to cock the striker, but not quite far back enough to chamber a round. She stuck it right on my face when she came back into the room and pulled the trigger. That was the greatest click I've ever heard. Got mugged, saw him pull the trigger. Heard the click. Asshole had his gun jammed or forgot to chamber it. Either way, I'm alive. Literally have this account to tell this story, because it's very specific. I was dating and living with an abusive asshole. One day, I had a tone with him and it got bad. He beat and strangled me, among other things. I ended up unconscious. He would have kept going until I was dead. My cat attacked him. My cat, who is a fraction of the size of him, and he was a big guy, went after him. I came to with blood everywhere, mine and his. The door closed and him cursing in the bathroom. And my little tortie purring, with her paws covered in his blood. We got out, and many years later she's as spoiled as can be and still very, very loved. Cat tax. My crazy religious aunt tried to drown me in the bathtub when I was 11. She walked in on me bathing and just shoved my head down and kept it there. I would have died if my younger sister hadn't walked in on the whole thing and tackled my aunt. Mind you, my sister was 7 and was abnormally small for her age. She saw the entire thing and quickly realized what was happening. After stopping my aunt, she grabbed me and ran to my dad who was asleep to wake him up. At first he couldn't believe what was going on, and my aunt used the excuse of, I was bathing him and he slipped. But there was no reason for her to bathe me, and my sister and I kept insisting on what happened until my aunt cracked and said that I had the devil in me and that I wasn't pure blood. Dad married someone from a different country, so I'm mixed, and she hated all of us. Dad called the police and my aunt confessed that she was going to start with me and then go after the rest of my 5 siblings in order to purify the family line. It's been 18 years and she's still locked up in the Coco house, and constantly saying that she's going to finish what she started. Worked in EMS, responded to a welfare check on a known to us patient with mental disorders. Walked inside the door with law enforcement and turned the corner to them leveling off a shotgun at my chest. Cop had his gun drawn and mag dumped them about 2 feet from my right ear. At some point the shotgun also went off but struck the wall. Have about 80% permanent hearing loss and chronic tinnitus in my right ear, but I'm alive. Fair trade. My brother and I were sound asleep and unbeknown to us, my mother decided to leave my father. She woke my brother and I at 3 in the morning in a panic. My father was a heroin addict and not prone to the best decisions. Whilst my mother was loading us into the car, my father went for his rifle. As we were driving away into the darkness and we heard shots fired, my mother just kept driving as fast as she could. We didn't realize until the next morning that there was a bullet hole in rear bumper and in the driver's side rear side panel. My dad tried to drown me when I was 8. He held my head underwater. He thought that me passing out was me dying. He started yelling at me when he realized I was alive. I still had some water in my lungs though and got treated for dry drowning when I went back to my mom's a few days later. Another time he choked me. He let go when I pissed myself because of the choking. He didn't like that he got piss on him. I don't know if he was trying to kill me here, but he also slammed my head into a desk once. I just got a concussion and thankfully nothing more serious. I think the only reason I'm alive is that I have one heck of a guardian angel that definitely deserves a raise. My mom tried to kill me multiple times. Once she tried to smother me, once during a psychotic episode tried to drive our car off a bridge, once left me in our burning apartment building. The scariest time was when I was about 12 and I woke up in the middle of the night to her on top of me, pressing her knees into my chest so I couldn't breathe. It lasted about 4 or 5 hours of me fading in and out of consciousness. The whole time she was just telling me how badly she wished I was dead, how nobody would remember my existence, holding my arms down and spitting on my face. I eventually talked her out of it, and she sobered up I think. My alarm went off and then I had to go to school. We shared a bedroom, but from that day forward I always waited until she was asleep before I could go to bed in the living room. She committed suicide when I was 15. I found her body. I always thought she would kill me first. I was on a motorcycle. Dude in a car rear-ended me with an intention to run me over when I overtook him. I went sliding over his hood, and he sped off. He was identified and booked for hit and run cause he didn't stop the car. End of the day, I walked away, not literally, with a broken fibula and a wrecked bike. A friend of mine had a good story where he moved into a new flat in Birmingham. He went to bed on the first night and woke up to some guys trying to kick his door down. He scrambled to the hallway to hold the door up. They had bats and knives and were swinging at him through the gap in the door that was no longer on its hinges. He started shouting at them and they immediately stopped and replied, "Who's that?" He replied with his name. A moment of silence fell followed by, "Sorry mate, wrong flat." Good thing he woke up. We assume the flat he moved into was previously let by a drug dealer. I assume they wanted to murder him in his sleep. Well, the moron put a loaded shotgun in my face and pulled the trigger. He loaded it wrong so it jammed. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.